Good morning. The console 3 to me says you can speak, so I start right away. In the background of the hard-hitting and haunting headlines predicting Mumbai getting submerged in water by 2050 due to rise in sea levels, this second international conference on climate change targeting coastal cities comes as a ray of hope, giving a feeling of great assurance that collecting wisdom is at play, based on which we will certainly be able to face the challenge with earnest efforts. At the outset, therefore, let me congratulate Mumbai first for the initiative and the support lent by the government of Maharashtra, particularly our young Environment Minister, Mr. Aditya Thackeray, for his initiative, the European Union, Consulate of Netherlands, and all other partners, McKinsey as the knowledge partners for this great initiative. In the light of recently released Mumbai Climate Action Plan, which outlines targets and pathways to build a climate resilient city, it is most apt that this conference is happening in Mumbai. This, according to me, is a historical occasion that cities similarly placed get together, deliberate on problems and challenges that they face, inform and share experiences, build consensus on climate policies and government initiatives, explore opportunities for financing, and address roadblocks for the sector. Earlier, when we spoke of climate change, it used to be restricted to something happening at the North and South Pole. Melting glaciers, polar bears getting displaced, penguins not having enough krills to feed on, their habitat being destroyed, and now we hear of glaciers melting faster than scientists ever predicted. Today, every part of the world is hit by some or the other climate event. In our country itself, in the past few years, we have experienced heat waves, desertification, cloudbursts, torrential rains, storms, cyclones like never before, resulting in either drying up of rivers and water bodies or massive flooding on the other side. Loss of crop due to either a dry spell or then on the other side due to torrential rains at the time of harvest when the standing crop is seen to be absolutely gone horizontal. Forest fires, disease, extinction of species, displacements, etc., etc. One of the major impacts that our country faces is sea level rise. India's coastal cities and towns have enormous socio-economic importance and are extremely critical in many ways. Major cities along the coastline like Mumbai, Calcutta, Chennai, Visakhapatnam are not only large and dense, but are major centers of growth. They are hubs of critical infrastructure and assets that contribute to the nation's wealth and economy. Our 7,500 odd kilometer long coastline with 260 million people living in low-lying areas within 50 kilometers of the seacoast has become extremely vulnerable to multiple risks related to climate change. Intense and more than ever frequent cyclones, severe floods are causing massive devastation to the country's coastal states. Early warning systems and disaster preparedness have been working efficiently in many states, because of which many lives have been saved. However, returning to normalcy and rebuilding damaged infrastructure remains still a big challenge, and needless to say, a great cost to the exchequer. For us, the first major warning bell came with the deluge in Mumbai on 26 July 2005. Maybe there were some climate incidents even before that, but they were not so visible or not identified by the people. This took lives of more than 500 people and affected property worth rupees 2,000 crores and more, with more than 900 millimeters of precipitation in just 24 hours. Now it is headlines like 80% of Nariman Point, Mantralaya areas will be submerged by 2050 due to sea level rise. That causes great concern about the future of the financial capital of our country. The Ipcc report predicts Mumbai will be first hit amongst all the Indian metros. It predicts that with the highest increase of total annual rainfall among Indian metropolitan cities in the 21st century. Secondly, about the temperature, it says that it will suffer from high mean temperatures. In worst possible emission scenario, Mumbai may have 4.6 degrees centigrade rise in mean temperature, during current century compared to the pre-industrial period. We all here in this audience know that we have to hold it at 1.5 degrees centigrade. The sea level rise at Mumbai coast is likely to experience a 60 centimeters rise by the end of the century compared to the 1995-2014 benchmarks under the worst emission scenario. While the rise is likely to be 40 centimeters, even that is substantial under the best possible emission scenario. The latest report of the Ipcc 2022 paints a further troubled picture. It predicts much more severe impacts if we fail to halve greenhouse emissions this decade. It is obvious that the time is ticking. We are aware that mitigation and adaptations are two strategies for addressing climate change. Mitigation, as we all know, is an intervention to reduce the emission sources or enhance the sinks of the greenhouse gases. Adaptation, as IPCC defines it, an adjustment in natural or human systems in response to actual or expected climatic stimuli or their effects, which moderates harm or exploits beneficial opportunities. Both mitigation and adaptation approaches are required to be adopted. At this juncture, we need to ask ourselves whether are our cities really equipped enough? I'm not a financial person, so basically I am not the right person to be speaking about finances. But with my experience of 15 years at the Pune Municipal Corporation as an elected representative and the mayor of the city of Pune, my experience shows me that we are really not equipped enough, knowledge and sensitive wise, to handle the SOS situation that we are facing today. We are no doubt very good in our response to calamities and firefighting efforts, but as far as in-depth knowledge of climate change, mitigation and adaptation goes, there remains much to be done. And therefore, my experience tells me that even at the administration level or the elected representative levels or the citizens level, we have to put our home into order. That is something that we need to do if we are really serious about addressing climate change and the action plans. I have put down some points as to what is it that we need to do out of my experience. First is capacity building and sensitization program for municipal officers. Except for the very senior officers of the municipal corporations, our municipal officers who handle infrastructure, building permissions, transportation, mobility, water and drainage departments, building permissions and conservancy departments, and for that matter, even the environment department itself need to be equipped with what the IPCC mandates or tells us or predicts. What is the lens that should be used while ideating or proposing, planning and executing any and every developmental activity for the city? Some age-old practices that now appear mindless will have to be stopped or weighed with utmost scrutiny. Rules need to be changed wherever required. What comes to my mind immediately when I say this is the issue of mindless cutting of trees and destruction of mangroves for big-time projects in Mumbai itself, thankfully stopped by our Honorable Chief Minister. Some practices allowed by the DC rules, I don't know what it is in Mumbai, but in Pune, there is a rule where we allow the developer to excavate the earth to allow space for parking under the ground. Now this cuts into precious aquifers, which is a matter of great concern, and therefore even if the rule allows it, we will have to rethink and reconsider and not allow this kind of rule to exist any further. The need of the day is climate resilient infrastructure. This can happen only with a good understanding of sustainable practices. And therefore I say that it is absolutely the need of the day that the administration is sensitized and knowledge inputs regarding the predictions and how one needs to look into these issues needs to be taken up with right earnest. I have another example from the city of Pune. Pune was selected for the Smart City project. A part of it was identified to be developed as Smart City. We had a lot of open spaces, which are called the amenity spaces. Unfortunately, I mean, one fine day when there was inauguration of the amenity spaces and we went there, we got to see that all these spaces were totally cemented, and that is what they call as amenity space and gardens and parks. Now, this is not what is expected. 2 years back, when we had torrential rains in Pune, this very part of Pune was flooded to such an extent that water, people had to get out of their houses and helped in little boats. Hospitals, the first floor of several hospitals were underwater. Patients had to be shifted out. So if this is the kind of perception of development, I think that has to change. And therefore, we have to come with concrete guidelines and norms as to how open spaces need to be developed. And it is a non-negotiable. You can't plug it with cement. Even time has come to decide whether we want flyovers in our city, or rather we use that same money in bettering our public transportation system. These are things which have to be worked on. We know that buildings are the highest energy guzzlers. Mumbai, Pune, of course, Mumbai has very high-rise buildings. Pune not so much, but we are seeing those high-rise buildings even here. These are guzzlers of energy. Yes, we are talking about green buildings, but are we doing enough? That is a question that we have to ask ourselves. And therefore, promoting energy efficient buildings is something which is the need of the day. I have seen in foreign countries, I mean, when you want to buy property in India, one normally sees which is the area, how beautiful the surroundings are, how well the building has been constructed, who is the developer. But we never ask what kind of energy efficiency is going to be my flat. Never ever. What is going to be my electricity bill? Never ever. So this is something that we need to work on. There needs to be a total paradigm change as to when we consider our buildings in the cities. Scientific handling of solid waste in the cities is absolutely non-negotiable again. Unfortunately, we are handling our solid waste, but not in the scientific manner. And therefore, though landfills have been banned, we still see them happening. Respecting natural features like hills, water bodies, even small streams formed during rains have to be respected. I have seen an example in Pune itself where the developer totally reclaimed that entire land and used it in his construction. And when the rains came, the torrential rains came, the water just broke down that wall and got into the building because it did not respect what the developer had done. So these are some things which are non-negotiable, and we have to make sure that nature is respected, biodiversity is respected in every city. The second point I wish to make is capacity building of elected representatives. I still remember that after the 73rd, 74th Amendment, when we women entered politics in such big numbers, 33% reservation, that time the government makes special budgetary provisions to build our capacities to understand how to work at the municipal corporation. Why don't we do it for climate change mitigation, adaptation, capacity building programs? I think it is time that all the elected representatives have to be given these inputs, have to be sensitized as to what is climate change, what is it that the Ipcc talks about, and what are the steps that we need to take in the near future. So these are a few things that we need to do on the front of elected representatives. There are a lot of projects that elected representatives take up with very good intentions. However, a jogging track in a riverbed to please some citizens in that area is not just allowed. And therefore, they have to understand that that is not the place where you need to have a jogging track. A children's park or tracks in a forest is something that just cannot be allowed. And these are all instances I'm saying because I have myself experienced that these are projects put up by the municipal corporators with very, very honest intentions, good intentions, but absolutely are against the environmental cause. Third point I would like to highlight is awareness amongst citizens. We expect people's participation. They need to participate in this whole action plan on climate change. It's not just the government or the private sector which needs to make efforts to bring down our carbon footprint. It's even these citizens who have to be part of it. A lot of citizens want to do something, but really don't know how to go about it. And therefore, forming area sabhas, sensitizing them, or meeting several groups and sensitizing them, giving them inputs as to what is climate change, how do we need to deal about it is also important. Again, two small examples I would like to cite here. In Pune again, we were broadening the footpaths and putting a BRT lane, and obviously the motorable way for private vehicles reduced. There was a big hue and cry about this, that this cannot be done and should not be done. But there were only few people like us in the municipal corporation who reached out to the citizens, who reached out to some of our colleagues who were corporators to tell them that this is the way. It's whether the chicken first or the egg first. So basically you have to reduce your motorable way and give more way to pedestrians and non-motorized transport, cycle tracks, and also for the public transport, and therefore the BRT path is very, very important. So this is something that we need to build in, sensitize the students and create awareness amongst them. The fourth thing is engage with private sector. Climate change is threatening business. Some have already taken steps to address their challenges and realize that is actually benefiting them financially. So also helps them in building their brand image. Tapping CSR, CER funds, especially for implementing adaptation measures, requires attention, and therefore it is learned that out of the different climate funds, a study shows that only 4 to 7% goes for adaptation measures. This has to increase manyfold, and this is also stressed by the recent report of the Ipcc. Therefore, we need to map and strategize and draw plans to make sure that private sector, we build credibility amongst the private sector to put in the money in those projects. Fifth is building partnerships. If we have to do that, we have to build confidence amongst citizens. People's participation, transparency is foremost, and therefore we have to work in that direction. The sixth point I wish to make is climate action plans. We have the National Action Plan for Climate Change, the NAPCC. We have a SAPCC. Districts have been mandated to do action plans for climate change. Cities, some of them have come forward to make their action plans. However, every city, there has to be involvement of stakeholders from different fields: academia, urban planners, researchers, public policy experts, climate experts. Until this doesn't come as a policy or a mandate from, say, the state government or the central government, probably this action plan will only remain in the document and will not be implemented in right terms. My second but last point is building an institutional framework. Till you don't have a multi-stakeholder approach to this entire problem, I think it is very difficult to address it. However, as the Honorable Environment Minister has suggested, we need a one-point council which will ensure accountability and action. And I think that is absolutely the need of the day, because I myself realize that we go to the Municipal Commissioner with several demands. He has so much work on his hand that the issues regarding adaptation or mitigation of climate change measures get sidetracked. And therefore, there is absolutely a need for such a council. As far as finance is concerned, after the GST came into existence, municipal corporations are still doing a balancing act as they wait for their share of money to come from the state or central governments. And therefore, there is a need that innovative practices in raising funds should be shared with the municipal